All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to today's training on the listing agreements. Today, we're going to cover the listing agreement when you are going to sell a property on the MLS. We're also going to cover the listing agreement when you're going to lease a property on the MLS. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask questions. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I am inside of Form Simplicity. By now, you guys may know that this is the program that has all of our agreements, the purchase contracts, the listing agreements, all the disclosures and addendums. And I think we already had the as-is contract class last week, and today we're covering the listing agreement. All right, so where can you find Form Simplicity? Of course, inside of your resource panel, when you guys are members of the Association of Realtors, you'll find right here Form Simplicity. We're going to get you logged in. All right. Now, once you're logged in, you guys have access to all the forms in the Florida Realtors library right here where it says blank forms. All right. So if you guys click on blank forms, it gets you into the library of all the forms. Now, as a brokerage, what we've done is that we've created packages for you so it's easier for you to handpick the forms you need. Because in the blank forms, you have all of the forms by the Florida Realtors Library. And in the search bar that you see up here on the right-hand side, search forms library, you guys can search for any form by name. So for example, if you needed a listing agreement, you guys can just type in listing and then click on search and you'll find here all of the listing agreements. Now, as I mentioned before, as a brokerage, we've gone ahead and created packages for you. So where it says forms packages, you guys can always click there and you can open up the exclusive right to sell package. And there you're going to find the listing agreement when you are going to place a property on the MLS for sale. And if you click on the exclusive right to lease, you're going to find the exclusive right to lease listing agreement, which is what you use when you're going to place a property on the MLS for lease. And then if you guys need a commercial listing agreement, you will click on the word commercial and it's going to open up all the forms inside of our commercial package. All right, so if I click on the exclusive right to sell, it is going to open up our package and you will see the exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker. Keep this in mind. Take note. We are transaction brokers here in South Florida and in all of Florida. Basically, that means that we are able to represent the seller, and in the event that a buyer comes to us directly, we can also work the transaction. So we can work both sides of the transaction, being that we are a transaction broker. If you were to select the listing agreement single agency, then your sole responsibility is to represent the seller. And if a buyer comes to you, then you would have to transition into a transaction broker. There is a form that allows you to transition into a transaction broker. However, you should just start right away by filling out an exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker. Therefore, it allows you to work both sides of a transaction. All right. So there's your listing agreement. There's also the modification to a listing agreement. So if you ever need to make a change to a listing agreement, you need to make a change to the price. You need to make a change to the terms, or you need to extend the listing agreement, or even cancel in the event that the seller no longer wants to sell the property and they request for you to cancel the listing agreement, then you would need the modification to a listing agreement. All right. Eventually, you guys are also going to need a flood disclosure. We'll cover that in today's class. And you will also need a seller's property disclosure residential or seller's property disclosure condominium. You will also need this when you're going to list a property. All right. So what I want to do is I want to pretend that we're going to go ahead and list the property on the MLS. And I want to go through the motions of creating a transaction inside of Form Simplicity, and then selecting the forms we need, and then we're going to review the entire, set of forms. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and click on home here in Form Simplicity, and let's pretend to add a listing to the MLS. So we're going to click on home, and then I'm going to click on start a new transaction. And let's say that my listing for today, I have a listing appointment and I'm going to take a listing and it's going to be 1020 Obispo Avenue, which is a property here in Coral Gables. All right. I'm going to go ahead and name the transaction just like this, 1020 Obispo Avenue. And I'm going to call this listing class. All right. So listing class, I'm going to go ahead and identify it so I know that this is a practice, transaction. And the property type is a residential property type. The transaction type, of course, is listing. And from here, you guys have the ability to already select the package. See here, forms package. Go ahead and select the exclusive right to sell package. And then click on create transaction. All right, and your transaction is now created inside of Form Simplicity. Think of a transaction inside of Form Simplicity like a file in your computer, a folder in your computer, where then you're going to keep all of the documents in that file. Well, it's the same thing. Inside of Form Simplicity, you're creating a file and you're going to keep all of your forms in there. Okay. Now, we want to use the tax data to import some of the information into the listing agreement. All right, because if I open the listing agreement right now, guys, let's go ahead and take a look. Here's the listing agreement. I open it, all it's going to have right now is the property address. All right, I don't know, it doesn't even have the property address. It has nothing, right? It has nothing. So in order for us to auto-populate the information, you're going to follow me. I'm going to go ahead and click on the little X to close it and we're going to auto pop the information from the tax data. So you see right here where it says import property data, we're going to go ahead and click on import property data and we're going to click on tax search, right? We're going to click on tax search. House number is 1020 and the street is Obispo. Okay. This is in zip code 33134 and in the county of Miami-Dade. All right. So you need to enter just a few items here. If this was a condo, then you need to be entering the unit number as well. All right. We're going to click on find tax data. There is the property, 1020 Obispo Avenue. It is in Coral Gables, zip code 33134. We're going to click on select. And we're going to auto-populate all this information by clicking on Save Information to Transaction. All right. So now that we've done this, we're going to go ahead and open the listing agreement now. So right here's the listing agreement, and you will see that the information for the seller is now live inside of the transaction. All right, so that is the seller's name. And then you're going to see here the property address, and you're going to see the legal description. Guys, if you do not do this, then you're going to have to manually plug in the seller's name, the street address, and the legal description. Where can I find all this information? All right. You guys can always go to IMAP, which is right here. You can go to RPR. You can go to Realist. There's so many different ways to do it. So if you go to IMAP, right, which is a public record system, you can always go here to tax search, Miami-Dade County, property address 1020 Obispo Avenue. And then right here, you're going to find who owns the property. You're going to find the legal description down here, and of course, the property address. And then you would have to come here and plug it in. All right. So right here, we have the owner's name on the listing agreement. That is line number one, seller. Line number, actually, it's line number two. Sorry about that. Line number three is the brokerage who's listing the property. Who's listing the property? Elite Ocean View Realty LLC. Now, you guys will notice right here, like a little forward slash. You guys are free to put your name right before that. Okay. So you guys can come over here and plug in your name. And I've plugged in my name, Roberto Rodriguez, Elite Ocean View Realty. All right. And then this paragraph number one talks about the length of your listing. How long are you taking the listing for? So let's say that my seller is going to sign the listing agreement today. Then I'm going to plug in today's date right here as the day that we are going to make this listing agreement effective. Now, normally you guys want to take the listing agreement for a minimum of 6 months and preferably a whole year. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a whole year to November 17th of next year. So I'm just gonna go ahead and swap out the year here. And we have November 18th through November 17th of 2026. If your seller only wants to give you 6 months on the listing, then go ahead and put in a 6 month range. If they want to go shorter than 6 months, maybe 3 months, then of course you're going to go ahead and put in 3 months. Okay. All right, paragraph number two is the property address. Then here we have the legal descriptions. And then over here, personal property, including appliances. What personal property and or appliances are included in the sale of the property? Here, we've already plugged in for you all appliances. Now, let's say there is a personal property that's also included in the sale. Let's say the owner has a outdoor jacuzzi, outdoor spa, and they're going to include that in the sale. Then you're gonna come over here and you're gonna put in outdoor, jacuzzi. Or let's say all of the furniture is included. Then you're gonna plug in over here, comma, and then do all furniture. All right. Make sure that you let us know what is included in the sale of the property. Occupancy. Is this property occupied? All right, is or is not currently occupied by a tenant. If it is occupied by a tenant, then you must express here when the lease expires. So if you're attempting to sell a property that is leased, then you must put in here when the lease expires. All right, because you're gonna have to put that on the MLS. Buyers need to know, hey, I'm buying a property that is leased, and I must honor the lease until the lease expiration date. Then you have over here price and terms. Here's where you're gonna place the price of your listing. So let's go ahead and list it for $2 million. All right, I'm gonna list it for $2 million. Put it in over here. One more zero. Okay, here we have $2 million would be the list price. Then right here, financing terms, cash, conventional. We're gonna go ahead and remove VA and FHA. This is a $2 million property. You're probably not going to be using FHA here. All right. So we are willing to accept cash, conventional, and that's it. Okay. If there are other, uh, you know, um, conditions in which the seller would accept any purchase, then other, like seller financing, right? Right here we have seller financing right there. Assumption of the existing mortgage, maybe that's another option. All right, so moving on down here to number four, it talks about the broker obligations. Just pretty much read this, make sure that you're able to communicate to the seller what your obligations are. It says broker agrees to make diligent and continual efforts to sell the property in accordance with this agreement until a sales contract is pending on the property. This includes, except when not in seller's best interest, cooperating and communicating with other brokers and making the property available for showings. All right, pretty much your obligations as the broker. And then number five talks about the MLS, the multiple listing service. All right, where we are going to place the property for sale in the MLS. The property must be placed in the MLS within 1 business day of the listing agreement being signed. All right, so we must get ready to place this property on the MLS. Make sure that you initial the bottom of every page where it says broker authorized sales associate. The seller is also going to need to initial the bottom of each page. Moving on over here to number six, broker authority. Seller authorizes broker to market the property to the public unless limited in paragraph 6B. All right. Right here we have public marketing includes, but it's not limited to flyers, yard signs, digital marketing on public facing websites, brokerage websites, which is IDX, right? Unless marketing options pursuant to the local MLS rules apply. Email blasting, right? Sending out through your CRM, multi-brokerage listing sharing networks, and applications available to the general public. I will tell you that when you upload the listing onto the MLS, there is an option that says internet yes and then also internet no. If you guys mark internet yes, your listing will then be syndicated to many, many different websites out there like Realtor.com, Zillow.com, and many other websites. So you are agreeing or your seller's agreeing to allow you to do this. Okay. Now you see right here where it says display the property on the internet except the street address. If your seller does not want to display the property on the internet, then you're going to so here a seller does not authorize broker to display the property on the MLS. That's one option. That's usually not going to be the case. I mean, you're taking the listing, you want the listing on the MLS. But if your seller does not want their address on the internet, then display the property on the internet except the street address. All right, you'll see that a lot where the sellers just don't want their address on the internet. So they're going to go ahead and check this off here. In most cases, sellers are going to want to have their property marketed on the internet and on the MLS. Okay. All right, guys. So virtual office websites. All right. So seller does not authorize an automated estimated estimate of the market value on the listing. So that is called an AVM. When you load the listing onto the MLS, there's an option that says AVM yes, AVM no. Seller does not authorize. I highly recommend that you don't put an AVM next to the listing, an automated valuation model, which is an estimate value of the property. So you're going to go ahead and check here where it says seller does not authorize. And when you load the listing onto the MLS, make sure that you say AVM no. You don't want an estimate value of the property being attached to the listing. Okay. Now, right here, seller obligations. So, similar to the broker obligations, the seller also has obligations. And the obligations of the seller is in consideration of the broker's obligations, seller agrees to cooperate with the broker in carrying out the purpose of this agreement. All right. So, basically, they need to make the property available for showings. They need to recognize that the broker may be subject to additional MLS obligations and potential penalties for failure to comply with them. They need to provide broker with keys to the property and make the property available for broker to show during reasonable times. Again, reasonable times, not at 9 o'clock in the evening, and definitely not too early in the morning. It needs to be at reasonable times. Inform the broker before leasing, mortgaging, or otherwise encumbering the property. So, if the seller during the listing decides they want to refinance their property, they need to inform the broker. If the seller at some point during the listing decides they want to lease the property, then they need to inform the broker. Okay. And if there's any, any damage to the property during the listing, they need to also inform the broker. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and read letter G. Make all legally required disclosures, including all facts and the materially affect the property's value. All right. Seller certifies and represents that the seller knows of no such material facts, local government building code violations, right? Any defects, none at the time of the listing. Seller to provide a seller's property disclosure. So we will review what a seller's property disclosure does. So at the time of the listing, there are no damages, no code violations, no open permits, nothing to disclose. Moving on to number 8, where it talks about compensation. Now, we need to make things clear. Compensation is always negotiable. Compensation is not a written rule or any fixed rate. It is negotiable. We've gone ahead and plugged in here compensation to the seller broker, which is you, of 4%. All right. So when you talk to your seller and you come to an agreement that the total compensation for this listing is going to be 6%, then how much do you, as the listing broker, want to make? So we've gone ahead and plugged in here 4%. If you're going to go 6% total and you're going to go 3% for you and 3% for the buyer's broker, then right here you're going to place 3%. This is going to be the compensation paid to you for listing and selling the property. Moving on to number 10. 10 talks about compensation to the buyer's broker. Once again, this is totally negotiable and not a requirement. See, letter C, no compensation will be offered to the buyer's broker, right? So if the seller agrees to compensate a buyer's broker, then letter B should be checked. And let's say the total compensation is 6%, and you decide to equally divide the 6%, then you are going to compensate the buyer's broker 3%. So now we have 3% for the buyer's broker, and we have 3% in letter A for you, the seller's broker. If the total compensation agreed to by the seller is 5%, and you guys are going to go half and half, then you're going to place here 2.5%, and you're going to come here to letter B under section 10 and put in 2.5%. That's a total of 5% compensation being paid by the seller, divided equally between you, the seller's broker, and whoever brings you a buyer. Now, if the compensation agreed to is 5% and you guys want to offer less to the buyer, then you're going to tell the seller, hey, we're going to offer 2% to the buyer, and we, the listing brokerage, we are going to take 3%. So now we're looking at 3% for the seller's broker and 2% for the buyer's broker. There are cases where you're gonna take a listing and the listing, the seller says, it's a little tight. I can't do 5%, and the most I can do is 4%. There are cases where, you're gonna have to decide whether you want to go 2% and 2% or stay with 3% and then offer 1% to the buyer broker. Remember, this is not required, right? This is just an option, and the seller has the option to not even compensate the buyer's broker. Buyer agents must have a buyer broker agreement signed with their buyer, asking their buyers for compensation for their services. So don't feel bad that you're only going to compensate a buyer broker 1%. They have the responsibility of collecting compensation from their buyer to assist their buyer in a transaction. So let's say in this case, we offer 1%, but the buyer's brokers also getting another 2% from their buyer. Now they're getting their full 3% compensation. All right. So once again, you guys are going to discuss with your seller. All right, so we're gonna take the listing and we're gonna take it for a total of 5%. You're gonna give me the listing and we're gonna go ahead and be fair and share the compensation evenly with the buyer broker. So you do 2.5% in letter A of section 8, and then you do 2.5% in letter B of section 10. All right. It says here seller authorizes broker to offer compensation to buyer's broker from seller in the amount of 2.5%. Any questions on compensation? All right. This doesn't mean that we are charging our seller 2.5%. This means that we are making 2.5%. The total being charged to the seller in this case is 2.5 and 2.5. So 5%. All right.
I have a question, Robert.
Yes.
Would you, as the seller's agent, ask the buyer's agent for compensation too?
No.
Okay,
Like if you're the seller agent, the only person giving you compensation is going to be your seller, right?
got it. Got it.
Yes, yes. So buyer agents have the right to collect compensation from their buyer with a buyer broker agreement, right? And then if there's any compensation being offered from the seller to the buyer, it'll be displayed here on the listing agreement at 2.5%. Now, guys, there are no fields in the MLS listing for you to display that you are offering 2.5%. It is against the rules. You cannot identify or you cannot even promote the listing on the MLS in any format that you are paying 2.5% compensation. The only way that a buyer's agent is going to know that you are paying 2.5% compensation is if they ask you, and they will ask you. They will send you a compensation agreement with the amount that you are going to tell them. Okay? So once upon a time on the MLS, there was a field that you were able to say we're offering 2.5%. Well, that field no longer exists. It is against the rules and regulations of the MLS, and you will get in trouble if for some reason on the MLS remarks you say we're offering 2.5% compensation. You cannot do that. All right, guys. Conditional termination. All right. This is important. If the seller is not a friend, not a family, someone you don't know, and you met and obviously you obtained the listing, then you may want to consider adding here a termination fee. So in the event that they say, hey, this is not working well, I'd like to cancel the listing, and you spent, $1,000, $2,000 in marketing the property, open houses, pictures, etc., then you may want to collect a termination fee, a cancellation fee. All right. Right now we have it set to 0 and it's going to stay at 0 unless you guys change it. The reason why I say that it's not family or friend is because maybe a family and friend would not do that to you, right? I mean, they're not going to change their mind halfway through and decide to go with another realtor. They may not do that. So, I don't think you should worry about that, but you never know. All right. So this is really up to you whether you're going to charge a cancellation fee. Additional terms, we have built in here that the seller is going to pay Elite Ocean View Realty a transaction broker fee of $495 at closing. And then any other additional terms that you'd like to add to this agreement belong in section 15. You guys can write in all of your additional terms here. All right, we're going to go ahead and have the seller sign this, and you are going to sign it as the authorized broker sales associate. Make sure we have every page initialed by both you and the seller. And now we have a signed listing agreement. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and save this here and we're going to go ahead and close this. And I do want to open real quick here the seller's property disclosure. All right. So whenever you get a listing, you also need a seller's property disclosure because at some point when you are under contract, the buyer is going to request a copy of the seller's property disclosure. So here it is for a residential single family home, and here's the one for a condo. We're going to go ahead and select the residential single property disclosure. This is a questionnaire, and the only person that can fill this out will be the seller. You are not able to fill this out. Notice how everything is grayed out, and we cannot answer these questions. So a seller must go through each section, answering each question with a yes, a no, or I don't know. So you're going to send this to the seller, and the seller is going to answer each question to the best of their ability, and they're going to go ahead and save it. They're going to initial it and initial it down here, right? And they're going to sign it here, and they're going to send it to you. You're going to hold it in your possession until you are under contract. When a buyer places an offer and you are under contract, a buyer must receive the seller's property disclosure from the seller. So make sure that you guys have this on file as you're taking in the listing. Is it necessary for you to upload the listing on the MLS? No, but it is necessary once you are under contract to deliver a seller's property disclosure to the buyer. Okay. You're also going to need a flood disclosure. So let's go ahead and tap into the flood disclosure real quick here. And the flood disclosure basically is three questions, right? It says seller has or has no knowledge of any flooding that has damaged the property during the seller's ownership of the property. So it's either going to be has knowledge or has no knowledge. Question two is seller has or has not filed a claim with an insurance provider relating to flood damage on the property. Once again, it's a yes and no question. And then number three, seller has or has not received assistance for flood damage from FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. So once again, it's a yes and no question. And they're going to answer this to the best of their ability. And we're going to go ahead and have them sign it. You are going to have to deliver a copy of the flood disclosure to the buyer when under contract. So make sure that you guys also collect a flood disclosure when getting a listing. All right. So those are the three forms that you're gonna need in order to start, an MLS listing on the MLS. Now, in the future, you may need a modification to the listing agreement. So let's say you start at $2 million dollars and a month into the listing, you guys agree to lower the price. Then you're going to need a modification to the listing agreement, which is right here, an MLA. We're going to go ahead and click on that. And then right here we have options. Termination, the new termination date will be. So if they request to cancel the listing, then you're going to check the new termination date and put in the date that it will terminate. Also, if they agree to extend the listing, let's say that you are approaching the expiration date of your listing and they agree to extend the listing another 6 months, then you're going to use this one right here. The termination date will be, and you're going to extend it. All right, if you are changing the price, then you're going to remove the termination date and you're going to check the price and terms will be and just put in here the new price. If there are any changes to compensation, then you have here for you to put in the changes to the compensation. Okay. And, if there's any cancellation fees or any other fees, you can come down here, select it and display. and then have the owners sign this, the sellers sign this, and you, as the broker or authorized sales associate, you are going to sign it. You guys need to send us a copy of this if you are going to change the terms on the listing agreement, right? The date, the price. If you're going to cancel the listing, you need to change this. You need to send it to us. Okay? That is the modification to the listing agreement. It's rather simple, guys. It's just a few forms. They're all inside of the exclusive right to sell package. You do not need the short sale addendum. You do not need a commission agreement. All right. You do not need a compensation disclosure statement. Those are some forms that you will not need. I've selected the forms that I need, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the forms I don't need. Right? We're going to go ahead and click on delete, and I just deleted those forms. I do not need those forms. All right. I don't need the one for the condominium either, so I'm going to go ahead and select it, and we're going to go ahead and delete that. I saw one in here as well that I don't need, but let's just talk about it real quick. There's a referral agreement in here. Guys, a referral agreement is used if you are referring the client to someone else. So, for example, if your seller has a property and they're selling it or they're thinking of selling it and it's in another location. Let's say the seller is in South Carolina, right? And you don't do business in South Carolina. You guys can always open up a referral agreement and you can put in here, broker A refers prospect to broker B. Broker A is you, Elite, Elite Ocean View Realty. Prospect is Michael Jordan, for example. All right, we're referring Michael Jordan to broker B. Broker B would be the broker in South Carolina. All right, and then the amount of the compensation that you are requesting for the referral of this client. All right, and then set the terms here. This is the terms on your referral agreement, and then have broker A and broker B sign this. When broker B lists the property in South Carolina with the seller and they sell it, then whatever you put in here, 20%, 25%, 30%, all negotiable. Everything is negotiable of broker B's full commission. All right. So you guys want to select the second one here. So 25%, for example, of the full commission received by broker B on any real estate transaction involving the prospect. Not just the one property, any real estate transaction. I am referring Michael Jordan to broker B in South Carolina, and essentially, Michael Jordan will be their client, but I want to be paid for, compensated, and it's going to be 25% of any transaction. All right. This is not really part of a listing agreement, guys, but this is a referral agreement that was inside the package, and I thought it'd be interesting for you guys to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out. All right,
Thank you.
so let's go ahead and talk about the listing agreement to lease a property. It's similar, obviously. We're gonna go ahead and start a new transaction real quick here. We're gonna come here, hit home. All right. And I'm gonna start a new transaction right here. And we're gonna put in here 500 Brickell Avenue, apartment 3805, right? 500 Brickell Avenue, apartment 3805. I'm gonna go ahead and name it the same. And I'm gonna go ahead and put here lease class. So I know to delete this transaction, right? Lease class. And property type is residential and transaction type is lease rental. And we are going to select the exclusive right to lease package. Before we selected the exclusive right to sell package. Now we're going to go ahead and select exclusive right to lease package. Click on create a transaction. All right, transaction is now created. Same thing, we're going to import the data. We're going to come here, hit import data, tax search. House is 500, street is Brickell, unit is 3805, and zip code is 33131, and county is Miami-Dade. All right, we're going to click on find tax data. There's the property. Click on select. We're going to come down here and hit save information to the transaction. Now we've populated the information, saving us a step. If we didn't do this, then remember we could go to IMAP and we can search 500 Brickell Avenue and pull the seller's name or the landlord's name and all that stuff. All right. But we've gone ahead and populated the information. Here's the exclusive right to lease listing agreement. Let's go ahead and review. It's a very similar document. Obviously, it's going to be for leasing the property and not for selling the property. All right, so we have owner and brokerage. So the owner is Martin Gustavo, and the brokerage is Elite Ocean View Realty. Similar to the listing agreement in for sale, you guys can put in here your name. So I'm going to go ahead and spell out here my name. Just going to keep it uniform, all in caps, like this, right? And we're going to go ahead and select the date. So again, very similar. We're going to go ahead and put in that we are going to take this listing agreement today, and it's going to expire in 6 months. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on May 17th, this listing agreement would expire. So I'm giving myself 6 months to be able to lease this property on the MLS. Once again, all appliances is included. If you're going to include all furniture, if it's fully furnished, then you're going to go ahead and put in here all furniture. All right. Rental rate yearly. All right. So we're going to go ahead and put in yearly because we want a yearly lease. And let's say that we're asking 4,000 a month. Okay. 4,000 a month. You have monthly and weekly if you're doing a short-term rental weekly or just 1 month monthly per month. We want to do a yearly lease and it's going to be 4,000 a month. Seasonally, you have also seasonally here as well. Okay. Advanced rents. The advanced rent. So let's say our landlord requires 3 months in advance for a tenant to move in. Then the advance rent here would be 8,000, which is first and last, and then security deposit of 4,000. If your landlord wants to collect two security deposits and just charge the first month's rent, then it'll be advance rent 4,000 and security deposit 8,000. Okay? We have over here pet deposit. If pets are allowed, but they're going to charge a pet deposit, go ahead and put in here. Let's go with $500 pet deposit. All right. Any other fees? There's a credit report fee here. There's an section here for you to put in other. Describe what that fee will be and how much. I'm going to go ahead and erase that. There are no other fees. Association application fee. Let's say it's going to be 150. So make sure that you guys put in here 150. Find out from the association how much the application fee is. We at times see agents on the MLS put in $100, $75, 150, and they're not totally positive in how much the application fee is. And then, guys, you should also find out if the association has a security deposit. So let's say in this case, the association does have, so we're going to click on other and we're going to put in here association security deposit and I'm going to put in $500. That is part of the moving costs, right? It's not just the security deposit that the landlord is requiring, but also the HOA may require a deposit, and you're going to put it in here. Okay. Association approval applications must be made within 2 days after the contract to lease is signed. So once we have agreed to the offer and everything is signed, the application to the HOA must be made, right? The landlord must provide the information to the tenant, and the tenant must apply to the HOA, all right, as soon as possible. They want to be approved before they move in. Broker obligations, just like the listing agreement for sale, broker has obligations, display appropriate transaction signs, including for rent sign on the property. All right, use a lockbox system to access and show the property. If the property is vacant, you may want to put it on a super lockbox. Okay. Request a credit check on prospective tenants at owner's expense. No. Let the tenant agent request the screen their own tenants. Compensate any tenants, consumer brokers in the transaction except when it's not in the owner's best interest. Check it. All right, withhold offers to lease property once owner enters into a binding lease agreement. Make a final inspection and inventory check of the property at conclusion of the lease. Complete lease forms as permitted by law. Complete and sign the lease-based paint certification as well. All right, all of that is part of the lease, and we are actually going to be reviewing the lease agreement in the next couple of trainings. Okay. Advertising, broker agrees to advertise the property, display the property on the internet, except the street address. Once again, if they do not want to have their address on the internet, they're going to check letter or Roman numeral one right here in letter A. If the owner does not want to advertise their property on the internet, then they're going to check letter or Roman numeral two, right? Owner does not authorize broker to display their property on the internet. Owner obligations, so any obligations by the owner, basically have a key available, have the garage available, have everything available to show the property. Compensation, brokerage commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Remember that. This is the same for in the listing for sale. So, what compensation will you be asking as the landlord broker? So, we've built in here 5%, right? 5%, and then 5% for the tenant agency. Now, if 5% is not agreeable, if they're not going to go with 10% total, but they're going to go with 1 month, then you're going to remove the 5% and you're going to check this last box over here and put in 50% of the first month's rent, right? 50% of the first month's rent is what you, the listing agent, is going to make. Then move on to compensation for the tenants broker and letter B. You're going to also change the 5% and change it over to 50% of the first month's rent. So the agreed terms is that the landlord is going to compensate 1 month for the listing of this property. So 1 month divided equally between both parties. The compensation to the tenant's broker is 50% of the first month. Compensation to the listing broker is also 50% of the first month. Okay. If you are agreeing to 10% total, then again, you're not going to check this box. You're going to check the second box and put in 5% and come over here and check the second box and put in 5%. Now, the landlord is not going to compensate the tenant broker. Then there is an option here, letter C, where no compensation will be offered. Okay. Any questions on the compensation for this listing agreement? We understood it? Yes, we did. All right, early termination, just like in the previous listing agreement, there is a clause here for an early termination cancellation fee. It is up to you whether you're going to charge a termination fee. And everything else pretty much is the same. There is some additional clauses here we've added. The landlord will pay $95 transaction broker fee to Elite Ocean View Realty. And then right here, we have a separate term that we added. You guys can read it, decide whether you want to keep it in there or not, and then have the landlords sign the listing agreement. And of course, you will sign where it says broker or authorized sales associate. Make sure all initials are on the form for both the owner of the property and yourself. All right. This is the listing agreement to lease the property, right? It's the exclusive right to lease listing agreement. You're going to need this in order to upload a listing onto the MLS. All right, we're going to go ahead and close that out and close it out here. You do not need a seller's disclosure. You're not selling the property, so you don't need a seller's disclosure. Okay. And there is a modification to the listing agreement here because if you're going to drop the price from 4,000 to let's say 3,900, then you're going to need this. If you're going to extend the listing agreement, you're going to need this. If for some reason you have to cancel the listing agreement, you're going to need this as well. All right. As the listing agent representing the landlord, you are going to receive offers to lease the property, known as contract to leases or CTLs. You're going to show the offer to your client. If they agree, you're going to have your client sign it, and then you need to prepare the lease agreement itself. All right. And for that, we do have a class next week where we are going to cover how to create not just a CTL, but also the lease agreement, the entire lease. We're going to go over the entire lease. So look for that class next week, or you can always log on to my YouTube channel and already watch a previously recorded class on the lease agreement. Okay. Guys, pretty simple today's class. We went ahead and reviewed the listing agreement for a sale of a home or condo. And we went ahead and reviewed the listing agreement for the lease of a residential property. If you guys are in commercial and you want to do commercial listing agreement, then you're gonna come over here to where it says blank forms. And you can go to the packages. You can obtain the commercial contract or the commercial listing agreement. You can come over here and just type in listing because I wanted to show you there's other ones right here. There is the vacant land listing agreement. So if you have a client that wants to list their vacant land, you have that one. There's also right here the exclusive right of sale listing agreement, commercial, right? For commercial properties. It's similar. You just go in there and kind of read through the terms and fill out everything the same way, right? Property address, legal description, who owns the property, the brokerage that is going to list the property, the date range in which you're taking the listing, description of personal property, including machinery, inventory, supplies, and equipment. You're gonna go ahead and put that in there. What is the price of the listing? And just come through here. Broker agrees, the seller agrees, all right, owner agrees, and then the compensations. All right, so it's pretty similar, guys. It's just for commercial properties. All right. All right, any questions in what we covered today of our listing agreements? It's pretty simple. Make sure that you guys master it. So on your next listing, you know how to fill it out. You know that you need the sellers to sign it, you need to sign it, and then go ahead and upload the listing onto the MLS. Full Donna, Emra, Michelle, we're good?
I have a question, Robert.
Sure.
Not on what we covered this morning, but with regards to a condo regulation form. If I don't get that from the listing agent, where can I obtain one?
You mean the condo documents?
The client asked for a condo regulation form. Is that the same thing?
I have a feeling that that's going to be the same thing, but you need to really specifically know what they're asking for. There's the seller needs to hand over all documents, but
So
usually the website
it's
for the HOA has everything you need
it's for a lease.
for a lease.
It's for a lease, yeah. So they wanted the condo regulation form, which I suppose,
It
you
should be
know,
on the HOA's website. Like when they're applying, they should all the rules and regulations and everything should be on the website of the HOA.
they
So
can't get it prior to.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
that's what they want. They want to look it
yeah.
over before they make a decision.
Yes. So, if the landlord agent doesn't give it to you, you can just go to the website for the HOA and download the rules and regulations.
Okay, thanks, Robert.
Oh, absolutely. You're welcome. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today for our listing agreement class. As a reminder, I did record the class and you'll be able to find it shortly inside of my YouTube channel. All right, guys, so have a wonderful day, everyone. Let's go get some listings.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, you too,
Welcome.
Robert.
Bye.
Thanks. All right, bye now.